So good morning and welcome to the who are we? We're the Cyber Agony Uncles for May. Oh dear. Oh Lord, you would have thought after the briefing I'd have actually woken up this morning, but that's no, it doesn't always happen, does it? So I'm Uncle Stevie.
And I'm Uncle Rich. Good morning. We're starting strong today.
We are indeed. So Rich, what have we got for us today?
So this month, we've got a question from a retailer, and it's as follows. I work for a decent-sized retail company. We have a few hundred stores selling all sorts of products. I am fairly senior in the cybersecurity team, and I'm absolutely petrified by the recent attacks on M&S, the Co-op and Harrods. I am genuinely concerned that we could be next. The thing is, security is the one area where the board have been underinvesting for years. And whilst we have nice shiny shops on the high street, the rest of our operations are held together by duct tape and string. I've been screaming into the void about our lack of tools, processes, and manpower on the security front for nearly a year, and nothing's improved. Now that we're at direct risk of a cyber attack, how do I tell the business that it's now or never in terms of getting secure?
Good question. That is a very good question. Yeah, because I mean, it is very, very topical. So there are. I don't think we know definitively that it's the same group that have been focusing on M&S, Co-op, and Harrods, but I think that there's reasonable evidence that it might have been. And they do appear, though, to be a fairly broad-based group. So the initial access guys were the scattered spider, or whatever it was. And then I forget now that that was followed up by and I can't remember the name of the other group.
Dragon Force, was it?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's something that we're kind of seeing more of as well, isn't it? That it's no longer one particular group working in isolation. It's kind of like a commodity market here of, how you get access to things, how you retain access to things, how you get ransoms done, whatever it might well be. So, although it does sound like it is a fair bet that other large UK retail organisations will be being targeted at the moment. So the writer of the question, I think, is quite right to be concerned about this sort of stuff. Difficult, and the trouble is you kind of you're too late. Really, and there's not much you can say. If there's been a serious lack of investment, and you're now in the middle of a relatively targeted, reasonably sophisticated attack or campaign, you can't turn this stuff around that quickly, unfortunately. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm in agreement. There's no undoing years of underinvestment overnight.
No.
But some of the talks we've given around cybersecurity for IT managers, or where to start with a cybersecurity strategy, some of the things we've mentioned in those talks might come into play. Stuff about doing the basics well. If you look up, say, I don't know, the threat intel on Scattered Spider and Dragon Force, and you see that they're using social engineering attacks against the help desk in order to get usernames, passwords, MFA stuff reset, things like that, then there's some quick wins in that area you can put in place around verifying people are who they say they are when they're requesting a password reset, things like that. So there are steps that can be taken for pretty much £0.
Yeah, I very much agree with that. I mean, what we do know is that the majority, 80% plus of successful cyber attacks, are in that category that would get caught and prevented by decent basic cyber hygiene. There was even an article, a report from CISA, the US cybersecurity infrastructure security people that I talked about this morning on the briefing, where they are basically calling out OT environments for the attacks that you're seeing there are like decades old, years old, and they're still successful because nobody is doing decent, basic cyber defense in that arena. So
Yeah,
there's a lot of stuff that can be done, which is very straightforward and doesn't require a lot of manpower or a lot of a lot of expense in tooling. Patch management is a good place to begin. Making sure that you have got um, at least some training in place around phishing, because a lot of these attacks start with phishing or voice phishing or SMS phishing or some form of uh, social manipulation of people within the organization. So I completely agree. The stuff that can be done there. Um, the other
yeah, absolutely.
the other area I was thinking around is visibility, because one of the biggest problems that organizations have is they don't know that they've been attacked, or they don't know that they're
Yeah,
attacked. So whilst you may not be able to do anything from the point of view of deploying correlated centralized um, you know logging and monitoring across your security estate, you've undoubtedly got information within the organization that would be useful as early warnings of something going on. So having um, just getting some alerting, even if it's only temporary, getting some alerting around password changes. So who
yeah,
who is changing their passwords? Make sure that you're logging things like log on, log off events. Just get some storage somewhere and get
yeah.
those Windows events rather than having them switched on. Actually, Rich, you know this way better than me. What
Hmm.
kind of stuff is on by default, and what in a Windows AD environment, and what is it that you can be switched on relatively easily that would give you that information to go back to?
Yeah, so in terms of security logs on your domain controllers, for those of you that are still on prem in that regard, you'll get login successes and failures, logon types. There's a type code in those events that'll tell you whether it's an interactive logon, a system logon, or a remote desktop logon, whatever. That's worth looking up. And there, if you crank the logging up to verbose, you get a lot more information. So there's different levels of logging available to you. And nobody for 1 minute is saying you need to rush out and buy a scene tool or outsource a SOC service or anything. If you've got these logs somewhere, you can just look at them. I don't care if they're centralized or not. You can look at multiple screens for all I
Yeah,
care, as long as you're sitting there watching them. A lot of companies, they might not have the budget for tools, but they will have existing manpower that they
yeah,
might be able to divert into just staring at these screens. Get a
yeah.
browser open with some with your firewall logs visible. Do it the old school manual way if needs be, but do
Yeah.
keep an eye on these things.
I mean, that works, especially um, because of the level of threat at the moment. Diverting resources into doing some of these things manually is possibly not a bad idea. No, it doesn't scale, and no, you can't do that forever, because undoubtedly there'll be a bunch of other things then that don't get done that should be
Oh
being
yeah,
done whilst you've diverted your precious resources into looking at these things. But the other side of it is, if you're concerned that you may be under a targeted attack, um, doing some of these other activities might not be the right thing compared to. So it's something I think actually I talk about this quite a lot on the briefings in the mornings, but the detect side of the incident response life cycle is one of the most important, probably the most important
yeah,
part in my mind, because no matter how good your technical security controls are, they're only good now. They may fail tomorrow. New vulnerabilities, because the environment is ever changing. There's new vulnerabilities. There are new vulnerabilities being discovered. Patches, changes, upgrades may introduce things that weren't previously there. So you can't be certain that because you've got solid technical controls in place right now that they'll remain in place. But what you can be certain of is that if you've got good visibility across your estate, you've got a much higher chance of identifying that something untoward is going on and then acting on that quickly. So if you can't detect it, it doesn't matter how good your controls are, you can't contain it or eradicate it,
Yeah,
let
exactly.
alone try and recover from it. So
Yeah,
putting some interim focus onto the detect side of stuff is good under these circumstances,
yeah.
at least until you can automate some of these processes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, right at the very start, and it's kind of a silent P, um, is prevent.
Yeah,
You know, but if you don't have the budget to prevent, then for God's sake, please concentrate on the detection side.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, completely. Yeah, the concept of having good visibility of what's going on isn't meant to replace good technical
No,
controls. It's meant to be there to make sure that the technical controls you've got have done what they're supposed to do, because that's the bit that you can't guarantee. So you start out with basic cyber hygiene, moving from basic cyber hygiene, focusing on then being able to detect what's really going on. And by which I mean, if you're looking at endpoints, you need to know what's going on your endpoints, whether that's
oh yeah,
end user compute stuff, server compute, cloud compute, whatever it might be. If there's a computer somewhere and you can get visibility of what it's doing, get visibility of what it's doing. There's then network. So what is going on across the network? And as I said, I've said this before, but even if you don't feel like you've got a network, you actually have. Even if all your stuff is cloud compute somewhere, and you're connecting to it over the internet, well, your network is then the internet. So just make sure that you've got visibility of the stuff that is traversing whatever it is, whatever kind of network you've got, in order to get to the services or the tech behind the services that you offer out. And then there's logging. So, all your cloud logs, your server logs, application logs, all those other bits and pieces. And if you've got those three domains of information, you've got a really good starting point for trying to understand what's happening at any particular time. And you can do all that stuff manually. It is a bit hard work. It does become a lot easier when you've got some tooling in place that can do correlation, and you can write some automated rules and actions around, but you don't have to start there. And if you've got, as you say, in this particular case, if there's been a history of underinvestment, you're probably not likely to start out by having a comprehensive, log and event aggregation solution, or a seam, or whatever it might be. That might come later, but you can, if you've demonstrated the value of being able to see this stuff, then it becomes easier to justify the expense in doing it better.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, and don't discount open source software. You
There's
can
good stuff there. Yeah,
yeah, you can take something like Wazoo for host intrusion detection, drop that agent on all of the machines you can touch,
yeah,
and you'll get some great security information out of that, and some great early warning signs out of that platform. And it's phenomenally powerful. It will
yeah,
do far more than you think at first glance, but it's a very low cost barrier to entry there, in terms of you just need a server to dump the server console onto, the
yeah,
manager,
absolutely.
effectively.
Yep.
Outside of that, it's free and extraordinarily powerful. So yeah, if you haven't had the budget for a lot of the, let's be honest, super expensive commercial tooling, don't be afraid to go look at some of the more mature open source offerings.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we don't particularly, we certainly don't plug anybody's products. We certainly don't plug any commercial products, and we don't resell any products anyway. So we've got
Hmm.
no skin in the game from that perspective. But in the open source world, Wazoo is great for endpoint visibility. Suricata or Snort. I think the world's moved more to Suricata a little at the moment, but
I think so.
Suricata or
Yeah.
Snort, both of which will give you incredible visibility of what's happening on your network, especially combined with stuff like Zeek, what used to be Bro, for protocol analysis, so that you're not just grabbing the packets and flagging up for known bad. You're also able to look into, well, is this actually really what is supposed to be happening? That's good for catching stuff like dodgy DNS. Log your DNS.
Hmm.
DNS requests are one of the best information you can get. And again, it's generally available. I believe if you're running Windows DNS servers, it's harder to get the logs out than if you're running pretty much anything else. Also, I was told by a previous IT manager that worked for me.
Yeah,
but
there are specific DNS. There's a specific DNS server section in the Windows event logs. Again, on all of your DNS servers, you'll have to crank the logging up. If you're running AD integrated zones, then that helps. Because at least then the logging is more centralized. So absolutely, you can do all of that. But as with most things Windows, you have to crank the noise up if you really want to get the valuable data.
Yeah, which is where having tooling in place to filter the stuff out. Mind you, having said that, I mean, if you wanted to look at open source log aggregation or open source SIEM tooling, there's some really good stuff out there. Our friends at Security Onion definitely deserve a shout out in that space. I think they do an extraordinarily good job of providing really functional visibility tooling for free, and you can get it paid for if you want to, if you want some really like proper enterprise features and whatever. So, but the free version is truly astonishing. So that's another. So there's plenty that can be. You're quite right. There's plenty that can be done. I think the difficulty is that if there is a campaign targeting high profile UK retail right now, doing any of these things is going to be very difficult in the timeframes that are available. Rolling out agents to things, it takes time. Certainly implementing although you could build a open source SIEM platform or a log aggregator, you could build the infrastructure in a day easily. Getting the information you need into it is going to take quite a while, and then being able to understand, doing the work to parse and filter the information that's coming in so that it becomes something useful rather than literally 10,000, 100,000 events on a screen scrolling faster than you can read them. That takes a while as well. So it is very tricky.
I mean, maybe their time is better spent actually making sure they're doing the basic cyber hygiene stuff, checking their network segregation, checking their firewall rules,
patching,
just patching everything. I mean, Christ, the most frequently exploited vulnerability right now is something like where is it? CVE 2017 11882. That's 2017, and it's currently at the top of the KEV list of the known exploited vulnerabilities. So
exactly. So there's plenty to do that. And again, also very specifically on this particular campaign, I would say making sure that you've let people know in your organization that phishing is something, they are being targeted, whether they've realized that or not. So all those spam emails that they see, there might be something actually behind that. It might not just be an automated irritation. Some of that stuff could actually be a toehold into the organization. And we've got to bear in mind that through the use of AI, phishing is more sophisticated than it used to be. It's almost that you need to look for things that are too well written now, rather than too. It's like previously you would just look for all the spelling mistakes, poor grammar, and lack of personalization. Well, it's kind of the other way around now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you just going off on a slight tangent, if you're interested in scattered spider / dragon forces techniques and tactics, go and look them up on the MITRE ATT&CK framework, and it will tell you all about their social engineering, their phishing. It will tell you what malware they use and all of that good stuff. You use the free resources that are out there, and then look at what you do internally, what your processes are, the people involved. I mean, this appears to start off quite frequently in your IT help desk. So go and talk to them. Go and tell them there is a credible threat, and this is how it will look when it hits your help desk.
Yeah. There's
Don't speak to these people.
I mean, there's an interesting thing around culture and attacking the help desk. And for a very long time, it was well known that if you phoned up the help desk and pretended to be the CEO and demanded to have your password reset, the vast majority of very junior people on the help desk, first jobbers on the help desk, would go, "Oh right, it's the CEO. I'd better do what I'm told."
Yeah,
And there were no processes in place for confirming that the person requesting something really was the person that
yeah.
was
I mean,
expected to be requesting that. And that's really difficult. I mean, if you're expecting somebody incredibly junior to say no to somebody significantly senior, if the attacker then kicks off in the way that you sometimes see C-level people kick off when they don't get their own way, a good proportion of the time, you're going to get the outcome that you want as an attacker. It takes balls of steel if you're junior to be able to go, well, no, actually, we've got a process. It's better if there is a process. If there isn't a process, it's just that I just don't believe you are who you say you are. That if you really are the CEO, that would be really, really annoying.
oh,
Um,
absolutely.
and if so, actually having a process for which you can say, yeah, absolutely fine. I'll reset your password once we've been through these security checks. It's difficult for even for somebody quite senior to say no, ignore all that and just do it anyway. But most
Yeah,
organizations don't have anything that they can use that 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 gives that kind of support to their help desk stuff.
yeah. I mean, there's a few easy policies that just suddenly spring to mind, which is you have, if you've got the manpower, if you've got, say, a second line, third line team or people, then you just refer VIP C-level support tickets directly up the chain to somebody more
Yep.
senior who can push back.
Yep.
Or you outright refuse to reset both password and MFA in the same ticket.
Yeah, absolutely.
Without
Yeah.
human verification. There's
Yep.
lots of things you can do. Just requires a bit of imagination on the help desk front.
No, absolutely. And so long if it's something like the COO has locked himself out of his accounts, so long as they can get fixed relatively quickly, so long as they can get fixed on the call,
Yeah,
um, it's the checks will be acceptable. The issue is if you then say, all right, I'll get somebody to phone you back in a couple of hours when, well, whatever, then you will get the pushback. I'm in a lot of organizations. But if somebody were to say to me, if somebody on the desk was to say to me, oh, I'm not going to reset your password right now because I can't confirm who you are. And we had, let's say, something really simple like, they send a text message to my phone to which I have to read out the number or whatever it might be. Even something as simple as that would be fine. And it would only take a minute or two at the most just to confirm that I am who I say I am.
yeah. It's really annoying that the kind of pushback against security protocols that you'd get from, say, a CEO who's frustrated that they can't log into their account is it. They generate the same kind of noise and urgency that a ransomware attacker would on a call.
Yeah,
It,
exactly. Yeah, yeah, and
it's
that's why it works, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Actually, do you know what? I've just thought of something else that it might be possible for this particular person to do in their own organization. Something that in fact, most organizations don't do this, but they really ought to, is test their incident response processes.
yeah,
So if you've got what you think are good incident response processes, testing them demonstrates that they are good, hopefully, and gives you the opportunity to realize that through an organizational shake-up, Fred, who used to do X, Y, and Z, now doesn't. So we've got a gap. Who now does do whatever it is. If you can use the other way around, though, to say, well, look, let's simulate something that has gone wrong. And let's see whether we actually have the ability to stand up to this stuff or not. But you do need to then bring together, that isn't a technical tabletop exercise.
no,
That needs to be a business level tabletop exercise. And you need to be thinking about the fact that, yes, you'll need your technical people in there because they will be able to say, well, if we were attacked, this is likely to be technically what's happened. But you need finance in there. You need communications. You need somebody from the SLT. You probably need your lawyers. And the reasons is that let's say you do get hit and you've done, there's been underinvestment for years, you will probably successfully be encrypted. The ransom attack will probably be a successful technical breach. You can assume your data's gone at that point. So whether you successfully recover from this depends not only on your technical ability to get your systems back up and working again, but on how well you communicate internally and externally. Are you demonstrating to the world that you're on top of this and it's going to be okay, or are you floundering around and you don't really know what's going on? If there's a ransom demand, you need your legal people in there. One of the things, by the way, I'm not sure a lot of people realize this, but public sector is now banned from paying ransoms. I think that they are now, there's certainly some updated guidelines, and I think it may now be law that they can't pay. So you need your legal team to be telling you, is it legal for us to pay this ransom? Are we putting ourselves at risk of funding criminal behavior by paying you know what I mean? It's like, so there's that side of it. HR, if people are locked out of accounts and whatever because there may be consequences around rights to work and there's all sorts of stuff, but you need to get all those people in a room, simulate the whole thing, and then find out whether anybody knows what they're doing. Does finance know how to generate £1 million worth of Bitcoin in 24 hours? And the answer to that is obviously almost all organisations. The answer is no, even if they've got £1 million. Converting it to Bitcoin and then actually giving it to the attacking group, like the technical ability to do that, people just ignore the fact that's really hard for most organisations.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's nothing better than a bespoke tabletop exercise for highlighting gaps in your process or gaps in knowledge or whatever.
Yeah.
If you can't do that, at the risk of signposting something, the NCSC have got exercises in a box where
they're really good.
Mario and things like that. They're nice. They don't have to be long exercises. In fact, their ones in particular are quite small and short. So if it might be enough to get you going.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. And off the back of that, if you can get the attention of people on the Exco, and you can persuade even a subset of them to go through, make it a 2-hour thing, or a full afternoon would be good, but you could probably do something in an hour or a couple of hours. If that demonstrates that actually, were you to be hit, you're going to be in the mother of all messes, they will probably be more open to, well, how do we avoid this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they say that there's nothing like a cyber attack to open up the board's wallet, but equally, a simulated cyber attack can have a similar impact.
Yeah, although hopefully with a much less significant impact.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can't think of anything else.
No, me neither. And we've hit the half-hour mark, so I think we can probably wrap it up there for today.
Yeah, I think so too. So look, whoever this person is, I wish them the best of luck. It is a very difficult situation to be in. Sorry. Also, I would say make sure you've got records of the fact that you've called all this stuff out. As you know, that thing about risk acceptance, the board accepts that you carry this risk.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, put it all in writing. Put your fears in writing. Put some suggestions in there as well. And as with all things, cover your ass.
Completely. And on that note, that's all from me.
And that's all from me. Thank you very much.
Speak to you next